However, unfortunately, it was a little longer back than that. I was actually in New Jersey 3 weeks before the official shutdown, and did a number of programs kind of in Central and North Jersey, and had some great interactions with folks up there. So I'm certainly glad everyone could join us tonight. Reference USA is a product of Info Group, which is my parent company. We're out of Omaha, Nebraska. The company's been in business since 1972, so a couple more years and we'll strike that half a century mark. The company started off as a list marketing company, continues to be very much that today. Businesses, large or small, will sometimes call and choose to purchase information from us about certain types of business, or with businesses with certain information. So we certainly have that avenue of our business. But about 28 years ago is when the first version of Reference USA rolled out, and it was a floppy disk that libraries would upload to their few computers that they might have, and make it available to patrons that way. And then with the internet availability, the first version of the online tool became available. I've been with the company since 2008, and this is the fourth edition of the Reference USA as I know it in those 12 years. And in fact, prior to working for Reference USA and Info Group, the company that I worked for in Omaha would sometimes lose customers that had moved. You know, we would not necessarily always get their new move information. And so ultimately it was difficult to get back in touch with them. So we would take that list on a green bar report, and we would get it to Info Group, and then with Info Group's relationship, we're fully licensed to brush our database up against the national change of address. So we learned about these people that had moved that way, and were able to then reconnect. And I would say, you know, our lift to that list was probably anywhere between 35 and 45%. So it everyone knows it's difficult to get, how difficult it is to get customers, but especially when you've lost them over nobody's fault, but you lost contact with them and you want to try and reestablish that. So I understand the value of accurate information and being able to get that in a timely fashion. And that's really why Reference USA was created. So it's made available through all the New Jersey state libraries, through the state library. And they give you access to all of these modules. Of course, with this being the focus on business, I'll certainly talk about B2B and B2C kinds of business. The beauty of this is once you understand how to search one of the modules, they all pretty much search the same way. So just real quick, for housekeeping's sake, the Reference USA logo in the upper left-hand corner, that is in fact our home key. So if you were in one module and wanted to go to a different one, you can select that and it'll bring you right back to this home page. We do have about a 3.5-minute video under About Us that walks you through how we verify our business data. So that's available. We also have a Contact Us option where you could reach out to us through either an email address that's provided there or our 800 number. So if you wanted to, you could certainly contact the library, but if you wanted to reach us about, you know, a search that you needed to do or understanding some data, you could certainly reach out to us and we'd help you with that. Our hours of operation are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. So know that you can reach us during those hours, and if it's afterwards, of course, we'll get back to you the next business day. We also have under our Learning Center a variety of webinars that we do on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We do have some YouTube videos out there that you could certainly take advantage of. And we also offer some great training guides that if you would appreciate something in the written form, you could certainly either print that or just have that page up on another tab and certainly learn how to perhaps do something with a tool that's available in the database that way. We do have a mobile app if you would like to download that. Right now, the two modules that are available on the mobile app are the U.S. Business Database module and the U.S. Consumer Lifestyles module. So those are both available on that app. And then we also give you the ability to register and create your own personal account. In doing so, you could save searches. We do give you the option of being able to download information, but if you would in fact prefer to come back to that search that you created, you could certainly save it and then come back to it at any time. And with that said, I do want to share with you the update schedule for these various modules. So our U.S. Business module, that information is being updated weekly. So any new verification phone calls that we've made during that week, we push that information live on Thursday into Friday morning. So that's done weekly. Our historical business information is technically done at the beginning of each year. So we'll do that kind of year in review, if you will, as it relates to the data. Our Canadian business information, that's done monthly. Jobs and internships. This is a relationship that we have with Indeed.com. This information is updated nightly. And basically what happens is when we get these feeds for jobs or internships, we then attach the corresponding business record of the company that's doing the hiring, so that the end user gets to learn about the job and gets to learn about the business all at the same time. Great tool, something you cannot do by going directly to Indeed.com. Our U.S. new businesses, these are filings through the Secretary of State's office. That information is being updated every week. So we are bumping our database up against that file and then adding those new businesses. We'll reject any that aren't new, adding those new businesses, and then it becomes our process to get them verified. Because once they're verified, we move a full record into the U.S. business database. They are housed in here for a year. So if you wanted to do some trend kind of review and see the types of businesses that are opening, you could certainly do that in that new business file. Our U.S. healthcare, this is updated every month, as is the standard white pages, the consumer lifestyles, and the Canadian white pages. The U.S. new movers and homeowners, this information is being updated every week. So that's our relationship again with the USPS National Change of Address. We're fully licensed to bump up against that and do so and make that information available. So if part of your business requirement or plan is to identify new people in your community, this is a terrific tool. I know that real estate agents love this because it shows renters. I know that insurance agents love it that sell renters insurance because of the renters available in there. And then, of course, the homeowners. That's a whole nother opportunity depending on the type of business. You know, certainly contractors like to know about them because most new homeowners, they're going to put some kind of touches on that house to make it their own, whether that's painting it, adding something on, new windows, whatever it might be. So all kinds of different businesses like to see this information. And with that said, I'm going to open up the U.S. business database, and then we'll come back to some of these consumer type databases. I'll launch that. Again, the process is the same. No matter what module I come into, I'm always going to come to the quick search screen first. In this case, great for finding maybe just one company. Maybe I want to look up just one company by name and be done with it. Maybe I want to use this. Maybe I have a really good customer, but I'm not quite certain what their primary line of business could be or is. You could look up that company, and all of our records are categorized with a code that's called the SIC code. That's the Standard Industrial Classification Code. So we have that, as well as the NAICS codes. Who can watch the news and not hear about, some of the trade that occurs between us, Mexico, and Canada? So they created a coding system. Those are the NAICS codes. That stands for North American Industrial Classification System. Say that 3 times really fast. So that particular coding system is what was needed in order to get this trade agreement kind of off the ground and functioning well between our 3 countries. So we do classify businesses using both. I would lean towards the SIC codes, and I'll show you why. So with that said, you could look up that really good customer and find out what their primary SIC code is, and then I'll show you how you could use that in an advanced search in order to find more customers or more opportunities for customers like that really good one you work with. You could also, maybe there was an executive that somebody used to work with, and that executive is gone from that company and you're not certain where they've gotten off to. You could certainly try to do a name search for that particular person. Hopefully you at least have an idea of the city and state that they're in, and you could try and find that executive. Could even do a reverse phone number lookup. I do want to show you a particular tool that might be used in a couple of different ways. And by the way, this tool is available not only in the business modules, but it's also available in those consumer modules that I mentioned. I'm going to do a search, and I'm just going to look at my community. So I'm in Omaha, Nebraska. You're all welcome to come out whenever you would like. We have a world-class zoo here if you enjoy a zoo. So Omaha, Nebraska, I'm going to look at all businesses across my community. There are some 29,000 businesses that are verified. We also have unverifieds. These are the verified businesses across my city. The tool I want to show you is this charts tool. What it will do in this particular situation, it's going to look at the top 7 SIC codes for all these businesses across my community. So there's that SIC code. I could always change it up to the NAICS code as well. So the top of those 7 are physicians and surgeons. And that's because they're all 1099 guys and gals. We have a number of hospitals. I think we have 18 hospitals here, not to mention a gazillion clinics. So certainly a large number, but that's because there are a lot of these 1099 guys and gals, followed by restaurants, followed by attorneys, followed by nurse practitioners, dentists, insurance. And look at the last one, automated teller machines. Now, some people don't want those kinds of records output in their records. I'll show you how you could exclude this information from ever showing up in a search that you might be doing. By the way, with this tool, you can print or make it part of a PowerPoint presentation. If you scroll down, you will see this is one page of 111. All the SIC codes that support all of these definitions for all of those businesses, of which there are over 29,000 across my community. So that's that report, but I do want to show you this employment size. Can't help but see the news and hear them talking about employment numbers and how businesses have been impacted. This gives you a great sense of, from a community perspective, How many of the businesses employ 1 to 4 employees? Nearly 60% in my community, followed by 5 to 9 at almost a little over 18%, 10 to 19 at almost 10.5%, etc. So you can certainly get that kind of insight as well. And you could also be looking at it from the standpoint of sales volume. So it just depends on what you need to be able to see. I can always get back to my results, and I'm going to come back to this chart here shortly and show you another example of its use. In this case, I'm going to revise my search. In fact, I'm going to do a new search. We did this all by the quick search by just putting in my community's name and state. So in this case, I'm going to go to advanced search. And by the way, additional filters here goes to the same place, advanced search. It launches a new screen with many more opportunities for me to filter out specifically what I want to see in the records that I get. The difference between the company name that's listed here and what we saw on quick search, where we could look for one company, this allows me to do multiples. So I can put in one company, add it, put in another company name, add it, etc. And then whatever geography I'm looking at, and then view my results. Could be that simple. Maybe there's 4 or 5 or 6 of those businesses. In fact, I had a patron that called just earlier in the week, and they had done a search that produced 6 pages of records. And on each page, there are 25 records. So they had 6 pages of records. He eyeballed all of those records and decided that he wanted to only keep 4 of them. But he couldn't figure out how he could save just 4 of them. I had him come back. I had him write down those businesses by name as they were listed in the database, and then come right back over to here, put in those company names one at a time, bingo, add them to the list, then put in that city and state that they're in, then pull up those 4 records, and then save that as the search. He was happy that he didn't have to save all 6 pages and then try and remember which ones he wanted from that. So certainly another way to use that feature. Otherwise, we'll always give you company name. We'll always give you the executive information, but maybe for your business needs, you need to see owners present. If that's the case, you could go into that executive filter and look at records that have an owner present. So when we make our verification phone calls, that's one of the questions that we ask. Who is the owner or manager of that location? So if you only want to talk to owners, you could make that your driver or one of those filters. If owners or a manager might be, then you could do both of those. In some of the records, you may end up having both, and then you have to make a decision. I suppose you'll start with the owner. In those cases where there isn't an owner present, but there is a manager, you'll have that information too. So know that we'll always give you this information. Business type. I can often do a keyword search. Maybe I have identified that primary SIC code for that really good customer. I could drop that in, or I could even use a NAICS code. I'll show you that one in a moment. The major industry group is only SIC codes. I'll use construction, for example. So it always starts off with a 2-digit number followed by a 4 and then a 6. So Uncle Sam, when he first rolled this out, this 15 through 17 stood for construction. Then when you click that plus symbol, it gives you a definition of what 15 represents versus 16 versus 17. If you wanted to stay in 15, you can click on that plus symbol, and then it's broken down that much further. That was all the further that Uncle Sam went with these codes. Info Group decided it could be much more granular. So we added 2 additional codes for 6 at the minimum. And you can see by that list how granular that made that. just by adding those 2 additional codes. So we've kept, even though these are technically retired by Uncle Sam, we've kept these alive because they do allow you to be so granular. I'll use that in an example here shortly. Geography pretty much speaks for itself. I will show you this map-based search tool, which is also available in many of those modules. This information kind of speaks for itself. Number of employees. We always ask in our verification phone calls, how many employees do you have at that particular office or that location? About 72% of those businesses will give us an exact number, and those that don't, we look at their peers in that area and then assign a range. So if you see an exact number, bingo, they gave it to us. If you see a range in there rather than a number, we created that number based on the type of business they're in, where they're in business at, how long they've been in business. So you will always have something to work with as it relates to number of employees. Sales volumes on the other side, as you can imagine, calling a business, you'd never ask a business, oh, by the way, how much do you make? You know, that phone call would end rather quickly and you just have silence, or they might be saying some other inaudible things. But in any case, we have a team that's all they do, or work on the algorithm that supports, for example, sales volume or business expenditures. So we are not getting this information from a phone call, but rather from facts about the business along with information that we get through the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. That's what all goes into that algorithm. Ownership will always give you that information. If in fact you were doing a generic search in an area and you did not want to include home-based businesses that might be there, you could exclude those, or conversely, maybe you only want to look at home-based businesses that might be there. So you can always do those kinds of searches. We'll always give you this financial data where we capture that information. If it's a publicly traded company, of course, their sales volume is going to come from their 10K report. So we'll always give you that information. Special selects, I do like to point out, if you're looking for new companies to your community, this is a great tool to use. Years in the database, because you're established. If I opened my business last November, I'm not going to say you're established 2019. Years in the database, I can select, show me those that have just opened within the last year or the last 2 years. Maybe I'm interested in 3 years. Just depends on what's important to me. So I can always drive in businesses based on that information as well. And as it relates to professionals, all or one, when I showed you the charts for Omaha, we had a lot of doctors, we had a lot of attorneys. So if you were by chance going to be doing a mailing and you were interested in trying to save some money for this campaign that you were doing, and if it would be okay to only get one record with one primary attorney or one primary doctor, you could select this and take it from all to one, reduce the number of records that you're ultimately going to be mailing to, and then, of course, save some funds on your mail campaign. So that is something that you could certainly do. And then we have the omission section. I mentioned the ATMs that we had here in Omaha that came in the 7th spot, so we've got a lot of them. I could select my keyword omit, and then I could simply type in ATMs, make it plural, search for that. There is the automated teller machines. That's their SIC code that they fall under. I could click on that. It adds it to my selected field down here. And if there were anything else that I wanted to leave out, I could do that. And then when I produce my results, I'll never have ATMs in them. So know that you can do that. Not to mention, you could also omit previously saved searches. So All depends on what you need in your situation. I'm going to do a keyword search. I'm going to make it very simple. I'm going to use restaurants, for example, because there are typically always so many of them. So I'll select restaurants, and then I'm going to look across my communities, across the county in my community. So I'll go again back to Nebraska, and Douglas is my community, so I can start to key that in. There it comes, click on it, add it. Now, if I wanted to add where I'm at in Omaha, we're right across the river from the state of Iowa. So if I wanted to add the community or the county that's over there in Iowa, I could make that my selection and then say Potawatomi. There it is. And I can add that county as well, and then I'll get results for both. Or if I didn't want to do the whole county over there in Iowa, I could always come up here to the city, or I could come up here to the zip codes and just drop in a few zip codes or just the city name and state and then get results that way. All depends, again, on what I need. So right now, I'm looking at only those verified businesses. Unverifieds are businesses that we may well have had verified at one point in time, and when we went to do our annual phone call with them, we didn't reach them. We'll try for a total of 6 times throughout the year to get in touch with them. If we can't, and now we roll into year 2, we'll try another 6 times throughout the course of that particular year time frame. And if we can't get them, then we move them from the verified into that unverified. And close really speaks for itself. So I'm going to search for all restaurants, and it'll produce my SIC code along with that description right there. I'm going to click on that, add that to my selected field. I mentioned about how granular you could get. If I wanted to, and you can notice this by scrolling down, if I wanted to, I could get into very specific types of restaurants, French or German or Portuguese or Jamaican, whatever I would want to see. So if I didn't want to see all restaurants, but rather certain types of restaurants, I could make those my drivers. Notice we go from a 6 to now a 7th number in that case. Notice if I keep scrolling down further, it even breaks out the restaurants by the name of those chains. So just depends on what I ultimately want to see or need to see. So I'm gonna update my count. I want you to see what I'm about to view for results. So this is across my county. There are 1,237 restaurants across my county. Or are there really 12,037 or 12,000, 1,200, 12,000, my gosh, we eat a lot. 1,200 restaurants across my community. Let's switch this from search all SIC codes to only primary. Watch what this does to my number. So it drops it down to 909. So what it got rid of are places like bowling alleys that have a little restaurant in them, or convenience stores that might have a little restaurant in them, or movie theaters that might offer a dining experience. It got rid of all of those kinds of restaurants because they're not truly, their primary line of business isn't that of a restaurant. Let me view those results. And since we were just in charts, I want to show you this example. Now, we know from the earlier chart report that I showed you, that was looking at my entire community and all the various types of businesses across my community. We're just looking at one type of business. So in that case, instead of the SIC codes, it's looking at the communities in my county. So those top 7 communities in my county. Then I certainly have that full report listed down below. But then if I wanted to, I could switch this up to employment size, for example. So remember, when we were looking at it from from the entire community perspective, 1 to 4 employees was the top size across my community. As it relates to restaurants, that's not the case. Only a little over 7% of the restaurants across my community employ that number of employees. 5 to 9 is that largest group, followed by 20 to 49, etc. So again, all of this information can be printed off or made part of a PowerPoint presentation. Could be some, and imagine if you were looking maybe at 2 or 3 different industries, you could get that kind of breakdown against those 2 or 3 industries. Could be some valuable information, especially if you intend, maybe you're putting together a business plan and you're going to go to a lending institution. That lender would love to have this example. It just helps them understand your plan. I can always get back to my results. Now I have a few other tools here that I'd like to show you. One of them is our heat map. So remember, I said that the charts is available in most of the modules. That's true for the heat map. If you don't see the heat map or the charts in a module, I'm positive you will not see it in the US healthcare. So if you don't see it, that doesn't mean it's broken. It just isn't there. But let me show you the heat map. This is a density map looking at my entire county, and where it's red, there are lots of restaurants in those areas. Where it's more yellow, there's less. And then green, all that other green that's filled in there, that is in fact other restaurants, but fewer in that area. And of course, no color, no restaurants there. So you've got that view. Again, you can print this off or make that part of a PowerPoint presentation. It does give you the top tally by zip codes across my county. So you have that. And you're also able, using this same map view, it notes here that if you change the zoom on this to where it's less than 300 records, this is what will happen. And it might take a couple of clicks to get there. I'm using that plus symbol. I think it's going to take 3. So I was at 2 and there is 3. And give it time to process. Don't just keep clicking on it and thinking, oh, this isn't working. Give it a moment to process, because it's trying to gather all the data in that relatively tight space or tight window. So there's all of that information as it relates to those businesses that are restaurants in that area that I drilled into. I've got a legend on this far left-hand side. And if I didn't know where this Firebirds was at, I could click on that and it'll take me to that location. If there's a plus symbol like there is here, it simply means that there's more than one result there. So you can click on it, it will identify what that is, and then you can advance to the next one. So it just depends on ultimately what you need to be able to do with that. Again, of course, that's printable or can be made part of a PowerPoint presentation. And I have done these presentations with lending officers from banks, and they love this kind of insight, because it's one thing to say, I've got these 909 records and I can, oops, Bill, what did you do? You hit the wrong button. I got so excited. It's one thing to say that you've got all those records, and it's another to actually be able to put them on the map and give him some clarity, or give her some clarity about what it is that you're actually going after. And when you're looking at it from that perspective, it certainly helps them in their decision making. So I'm going to select Nebraska and Douglas again. I can't believe I hit the wrong button. Update my account, oh, and I've got to change that to the primary, and then I'll view my results. So there's my 909. And at this point, I would like to show you, I'm going to advance to page 2. I want to show you Arby's. So for example, I've got, you know, the company name in this column and that executive and address, etc. Here I've got the corporate tree, and there is this down arrow. I could change this up. If I wanted to see the titles for these executives, I could change that from corporate tree to title and get that information. But I want to show you this corporate tree information. So the up arrow will take me to the subsidiary only. So it'll only show me one record. If I select this option for the entire organizational chart, it shows me the whole kit and caboodle. I wonder where that phrase ever came from. I'm going to have to look that up. So here's the deal. Arby's is managed by Inspire Brands. Inspire Brands is actually owned by this private equity firm out of Atlanta, Georgia. So I've just gained a world of insight about Arby's in the matter of one click. It notes here that there are 38 total subsidiaries and over 24,000 branches. There is a legend that runs across the top. And as you'll note here, we could even have a subsidiary of a foreign parent. Just know that we'll never show the foreign parent. We don't go overseas. We stop at the border, the US border. So quickly, if I didn't know what this PV stood for, I can quickly identify that it's a private company. If I wanted to see these other subsidiaries, I could scroll down and get to it, or I can close this subsidiary up, and then I see all the others right there. So if I'm selling, if I wanted to sell something to Arby's and I found this information about the corporate structure, I could be identifying other restaurants. And believe me, I have personal experience at this restaurant, and they do serve marvelous food there. So marvelously not good for you. I could identify restaurants very easy. I'm sure you recognize this particular company. You probably recognize maybe Jamba Juice. There's a Freaky Fast company right here. Oh, Miller's Ale House, they might serve food there, yes. Sonic Restaurants. So I'd be able to identify and understand and maybe even maximize a bigger opportunity with this kind of insight. So you can get a wealth of information there. You can download this, you can print it off. I'm going to show you the Arby's record. So I'll go back. I can always get back to my list. I want to open up this Arby's record. Just click on the name, it'll open it up, and every one of our business records is set up just like this. First, you'll be given this location information, followed by those job listings. So that's that information we're getting through Indeed.com. Look, I also have the corporate structure inside the record, so it's available there as well. Then I'll have the industry profile. There's that primary SIC code. And if this were that really good customer that I had and I didn't know what their code was, I could write that code down now and skip the dash, by the way, just the 6 numbers. I could write that down, and then I can do a search in that keyword box where I typed in restaurants. I could type in that number, hit search, and it'll come up with this definition for that SIC code. I would click on it, and then I could drive in results for that. Also have a business profile in this case. Now, we won't necessarily have a business profile on every single business. You know, Bob's Garage down the street isn't going to have that. We do work closely with Google Maps. So we have that embedded on each and every record. Printable if you'd like. So we updated this record this month. We'll update them again next year, July. When we contacted them, they told us they had 30 employees. Now, what we don't clarify or ask of them, how many of them are full-time versus part-time? That number, along with the type of business they're in, who they're owned by, the type of business, years in business, where they're physically in business at, because there are going to be different expenses related to location. That's what goes into that algorithm to produce this sales volume. So unless it's publicly traded, and there are some larger private companies that will self-report, but not a lot of them. So if it's private, figure that was modeled. So we have that information of the business demographics, then we have that management directory, followed by company news. So this is through Bing. We get this whenever it comes out. So this was yesterday, 2 articles from yesterday. And you can see it gets quite deep in that you can learn about a lot of other articles that are out there available as well. So know that that's available. Of course, no stock data because it's not publicly traded. Business expenditures, again, this is that modeled information that our team puts together. Then we have some historical information along with historical records. So it goes back to 03 through 19. I can click on any of these and open that up. There's that 2010 record. You'll notice I have this slide, and now look how far back it goes. So our slide goes all the way back to 97. That's when we started archiving historical information. So I can go back, maybe I want to go back to 99 and look at that information. And by the way, we do track name changes. So if a business has changed its name, we will identify that. Same thing with address, anything that may have changed, we would track those kinds of changes and make that available. We do track UCC filing, so if they had a loan and they put up some type of collateral, that would be captured. There's none in this particular case. Then we have the nearby businesses because we have the latitude and longitude embedded in the background, so we know who's next to whom. And then finally, a competitors report. So every record is going to be set up just like this. Now, if it's a church or a nonprofit of some sort, of course, there's not going to be any competitors. And there will be those cases where we won't have nearby locations as well. But otherwise, every record is going to be set up just like this. Of course, nonprofit isn't going to have any of this information or that sales information. Otherwise, every record will look just like that. Any questions?
Well, Bill, we do have a question from Tina. She wants to know, does ReferenceUSA provide email addresses?
Excellent. Tina, you get the prize of the night. The answer is, the question is, does ReferenceUSA provide email addresses? I'm going to go back, and it notes right up here, of the 909 results, there are 53 email addresses. And then it says more information. So it does direct you. We sell those. So we do technically have them, yes, and we sell them. And you would contact our reference@infogroup.com to inquire about that. What I can tell you as it relates to the email addresses, by the way, we have many more than 53 that would apply to this 909. We own another company that has a gazillion email addresses. But per the contract, we cannot display their totals in with our total. These are what are owned by my company, and the others are owned by the company that we own. So we probably have 65 to 70% coverage for this number as it relates to those email addresses. And There's three options. You can either purchase them and walk away and use them for a year. It's a year-long license. Or we do have a do-it-yourself platform that the person that you would work with at this number could provide you with the insight to that. And then we also have a full service. So if you wanted us to do the email on your behalf, which is less expensive, by the way, if you wanted us to do the email on your behalf, we could do everything from the creative all the way to the blast, and then we provide you with a report. Of course, we would get your consult on the creative and the language, etc. So, sorry, that was kind of a long answer, but I hope that that did it for you, Tina.
Thank you, Bill.
Any other questions?
We don't have any in Q&A, but
Okay.
if anyone has some and they want to put it in the Q&A or the chat box, please do.
Absolutely. I'm going to select Revise My Search. I want to show you another tool that is also available in the other modules that I mentioned, and that is the map-based search tool. So instead of doing the county, I'm going to open up the map-based search tool, and I'm going to add a couple of more filters. I'm going to say number of employees, and I'll just grab a couple of ranges there, and I'll say only show me restaurants that have a web address. And then I'm going to open my map, and notice in the upper left-hand corner it says zoom to. So where do you want to zoom to on the map here? You could use a physical address, whether that be a home address or a business address. You could use a city-state, a zip code, a county-state, just depends on what you want to use. I'm just going to use the zip code here and say go. This is coming again into Omaha. There's that zoo I mentioned. Great zoo. I have several options under the select your area. I can draw my own shape. I could use a true radius. I could use some predetermined boundaries, or even create a drive route. And by the way, on the drive route, I was doing a presentation, as I mentioned, back in February when I was in Central and North Jersey, and somebody had asked me, how about if I'm going from Penn Station to some other station? Will it work along there? Well, we tried it and it did. So if that would be of value to you, know that that would work as well. I'm going to draw my shape first, and this, I get to decide where in the world I want to begin and where I want to end. So a single click to begin, and then you can go in any direction here. I'll go up this way, and I'll come back towards town, and I'll come down along the river, and I got to get the zoo in there, and I'll double click to finish it. Double click to finish it. Thank you. Sometimes it takes a double. And then once you're done, it calculates how many businesses in that shape match your criteria. The other thing that you can do with this, I had a gentleman from a small business development center call me, and he remembered me showing this example but couldn't quite remember how to do it. But no matter if you've drawn a shape or you've used a predetermined boundary or you've used a radius, you have the ability to alter within any of those shapes. So he asked me about being able to draw another shape inside of a shape. So let's do this. Let's say that I want to exclude this area, and I'll just double click to finish that. It says that there are 19 results in there. Double click in that new shape, select exclude, say okay, and those 19 results are going to be deducted from that 103, and you'll get that new total when you say done, and they're there waiting for you. Those 84 are there. So it just depends on what you need to be able to do. Afterwards, I asked him, because he wanted to do that in 2 different spots. I said, what are we deducting, or what are we going to eliminate from that area? And he said the customer he was working with was very superstitious, and that there were 2 cemeteries in that area that needed to come out. And I said, okay. So just depends on what you need to do for drawing your shape. I can use a true radius. Maybe this was the physical address that I put in. My radius will go out a maximum based on how big my map view is. So as you can see, I'm using that minus sign to back out further and further. I can go a maximum of 150 miles. In this case, I think I'll keep it back in on the city, and I'll just do my, and this one, when you click it, you hold it and just drag it away in any direction. So click, hold, and drag away. And it will tell you in that lower right-hand corner how far out you've gone. I'm already at 2 miles, or a little over 2 miles there. Let's go out to 3 miles, and we'll stop there and see what that does. So I've got 45 results that match my criteria that I put in. If that's it, I say done, and I view my results, and I'll have those 45. I also have some other boundaries. It'll always start with the state boundary. I'm going to overlay, in this case, notice it could get as small as a neighborhood. That's crazy small. I'll do zip codes. In fact, I'm going to drill in just a little bit because there's so many of them. Once I have that the view that I want, I can click in any of these zip codes and I'll get my total. So I've got 4 in that zip code, and I've got 29 out in that zip code. They don't even have to be continuous. I can select these in any manner that I see fit. So depending on where you're at, you can select it. And if that's all you wanted were those 3, you could say done, and then you would have your total. So know that that is available. I better delete these guys real quick. And I can always return to my tools. And here's that drive route that I mentioned. So I helped a gentleman in Wisconsin. We'd actually put in 2 primary SIC codes. One of them was for new manufacturing of skid pallets, and one was for the remanufacturing of skid pallets. So he wanted to start in one city and go to another along an interstate system. And I'll just do Omaha, and we're just looking at restaurants as we know. But in his case, he was looking at the manufacturers of these skid pallets. And he wanted to create a buffer distance of 3 miles either side of the interstate. He figured that those businesses would be within that 3-mile range of the on-off ramps for the interstate, because they needed their customers to have easy access to them from the interstate. Not to mention the businesses that were supplying them with the product, the milled lumber and what have you. So he created that just doing the number 3, and that 3 would look north, and then there'd be another 3 that would look south, so a total of 6 miles. I'll just do 0.5, so 1/2 mile on either side of the roadway it's going to follow. Then it's just a matter of creating my route. By the way, if it didn't like anything in these options that I included, because as it notes here, I could be inputting a physical address with Omaha, Nebraska. I could do the address and the zip code, or all 3. But if it didn't like something, if it said, oh, that's not really a mailing address that we're familiar with, then it would be red. And it wouldn't let you go any further, so you'd have to choose another address. Let me do the buffered route. So it's going to go 1 mile, 1/2 mile north and a half mile south. So there are 89 results in this route from Omaha down to Lincoln. And if that's all I need, I can say done, which I'll do in this case. There's my 89. I'm going to view my results. Just like what I've seen with those other restaurants that we looked at. But now what I'm going to do, and this is exactly, now he only had a total of 18 results along about 125 miles worth of interstate. We've only gone about 50 miles. I'm going to put this back on the heat map. So it'll start off with the view of the United States. And I'll have to center my map a little bit. Let's get it up here a little higher. Center that map. And then I can begin to drill in using that plus symbol in the lower right-hand corner. I can start to drill in on my map. It'll take about 6 clicks, and I might have to, as you can see, recenter by clicking and dragging it. And then I can click again. Gotta let it process. Then again, ooh, I'm so close. I am gonna need to recenter that. Then I can click again, and maybe one more time. Okay, I lied, one more time. There. So now I have all of those 89 listed. And if I wanted to know where this KFC was at, bingo, there it is. And then I can go right down that line. So it just depends on how that information could be useful for you. Again, printable, or I can make it part of a PowerPoint presentation. So know these tools are equally available in all of the modules. And speaking of all, doggone it, how did this time just like skate by? Any questions regarding the business? I would like to show you those consumer modules real quick if we have a moment. We started late, so we get to cheat a couple of moments.
I don't see any questions
okay.
now. So if you want, you can continue.
Excellent. I'm going to go right to the ReferenceUSA home key. And let's do this. Let's look at those. I mentioned those new movers. So I'm going to open up new movers. And instead of using the quick search, I'm going to go right to advanced search. And on my left-hand column are the different filters that I can use. Let's start off kind of small, and we'll just do city and state. And then I'll say move distance and time frame. So I'll select Omaha again here. It could be any community. I'm just going to put in the city name and select go, and then it will come up with all of the options for Omaha. I'll select my Omaha, Nebraska. And then it's a matter of what is the move distance ideally for what I want to look at. If I don't want to include people that have moved across town, or people that have come from the neighboring town, which is only 7 miles over here, I could say, you know what, let's start the counter at, in this case, 50 miles. So that it could be less. Maybe I want to do 30. And then let's say, let's go a little over 2,000. Let's say 2,200. It always defaults to the last 6 months. Notice it could be as recent as last week or within the last year. Let's look during the 3 months here with this pandemic. Let's look and see how many people have moved from at least 30 miles away up to 2,200 miles away into Omaha, Nebraska. I have 1,199 people that have moved into Omaha in those last 3 months. So if I wanted to get a sense, maybe I sell real estate. And I would like to know, of this 1,199, how many of them are renters? I could select home ownership, open that up, say, give me renters, and then update my count again. So I've got 438 renters that are out there that I could potentially do business with. Now, maybe I want to throw in some other factors. Maybe I want to look at estimated home income. I could select that, and maybe I want to work with certain ranges. And let's say that I work best with those folks that are earning 70 to let's say 124. So of these 438 renters, how many of them fall into this estimated home income? I can update that count. I've got 53. Now I know about 53 people who, and that's just for the last 3 months, that have moved into this community. I want to get in front of them first. And here's what their records are going to look like. And notice it does give you a cautionary warning here about the do not call list. You should not be using any phone numbers, and of course you aren't seeing any at this juncture, any phone numbers that would be used for solicitation. And then it mentions here that you are also responsible for the compliance with all those federal, state, and local laws. And I would add, unless you have the appropriate, I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that I used to work for a company that we would lose customers and we would hire Info Group to bump our information up against that national change of address so we could try and reestablish our connections with those customers. So in essence, if you have this list run through the do not call registry, the remaining phone numbers, and again, we're not seeing many, the remaining phone numbers would be those that you could call on. Otherwise, 53 results, you could do a mail campaign, and this is exactly how you do it. And this would be true if I were doing this for business records, for consumer records, or for these new movers and new homeowners. I simply select this box next to that first name and grab it. And through the state, you can download 100 records at a time. So since I only have 53, I'm going to be able to do that in 3 pages. So I can advance to the next page, grab those, and then the final page, which is just going to have a few, grab those, and then come over here to my download, select that. Comma delimited is definitely what you want to use for mailing labels. If you simply need the name, address, phone number if it were available, it does provide you with some additional data fields. Go with that summary. And this is exactly what that information is going to look like. So I'll have that name information, that address information, the unit number that they're in, obviously Omaha, Nebraska, and that zip code. So you can download as many of those as you need to in groups of 100. Granted, we only had 53 here, but if I had 500, I would have to do 4 pages, download them, come back and get the next 4. And if you were going to do that, I would suggest, and this is true for all the modules, I would suggest opening up your own version of Excel because my pages are all static. You cannot add to these pages, but you can on your own. So you could come right up here into this left-hand corner between cell 1 and A, click, copy that, and then drop that in your own version of Excel. You would then minimize yours, come back here, close mine, it'll leave you here, and then it's as simple as selecting back. And then you have to get rid of these check marks. Easiest way to do that is revise your search. It doesn't forget how you built it. Then view your results again, It brings you back to page 1. It clears out all those check marks, and then you just go to this box and you type in the number, the page number that you left off on. So if we'd truly done 4 pages, I would type in the number 5 there and hit enter, and I could start with the next 4 pages of records. So it is that easy to take out that information, or you can save it. Now, mind you, if you save it and come back to a search, in this example with the information as it relates to new movers and new homeowners, you come back to that search, let's say 2 months from now. So instead of 3 months, now you're looking at 5 months worth of data. You get the idea. That number is going to increase. So know that you could save that search as well. Questions on this? There's lots of different options by which you can search and filter out this information. Just depends on what your needs might be. Okay. Julie, do I have time for one more?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Let me show you the consumer lifestyles. This is a very popular module. If your business plan requires B2C, this is a great tool to use. We're garnering the information that supports the consumer lifestyles database from sources like surveys that people have completed, warranty cards, utility hookups, credit card processing companies. In my case, I was not in this database when I first moved back into Omaha. I ended up with a sick dog, took him to the vet, found out it was the dog food formula that I was feeding him, and the vet said, instead of spending a lot of money trying to determine what he's allergic to, just get him an all meat or an all fish or an all poultry product. He said, do you have a PetSmart or a Petco near you? And I said, yeah. He said, go there. Here's a list of products you might try and see what works for him. I then became a dog lover under the pets and animals category. So let me show you how this works. I can do an advanced search. Again, additional filters goes to the same place. I helped a lady just the other day who was in the Oklahoma City area. She has a training service that she offers for dogs, and she also does dog walking, so she does both. She was looking to identify some of those folks around her home. So we put in her physical address in the radius option. We put in her address, her zip code, and then we did a number of miles around her home looking for those dog lovers right there. So that's one certainly way that you could do that search, and she was tickled pink that she could identify and send out a mailer to those people about both of her services. So it just depends. Let me do this search a little differently. I'm just going to look at it from the perspective of my community because I want to show you some ways that you might filter. So I'm going to select my Omaha, Nebraska. I'm going to say 1 per household. I only want 1 record per household. I'm looking at all those dog lovers. So how many do I have across my community? 9,881 dog lovers across my community. Now I get these questions from patrons. Do you know how many dogs they have? I don't know how many dogs they have. Do you know what kind of dog food they feed? I don't know what kind of dog food they feed. We're not tracking any of that. All we're tracking is the activity level that they're, in my case, I signed up for a PALS card through Petco. So that's how they were able to identify me as that dog lover. So we're trying to show you those people who are active in their category. And we do have, and it notes it right here, we have a scoring system of 0 through 9. we will only show you those people who score a 6 or higher. So we know there's many more dogs in Omaha than just these 10,000, but they're not active enough in that category. So what could happen is maybe they buy occasionally from Petco when they go there to have their dog's grooming done. But the rest of the time they're buying their pet food at the local grocery store. We may not learn about that. So if that's the case, that's why that number is what it is. But look at what happens. Maybe like this lady in Oklahoma City, she wanted to identify certain income ranges. So she started at that rate and went up to about 250. Let's see what that does to my total. So I still got 2,300. She could no more walk 2,300 dogs than the man in the moon. So that was still too much for her. So we had to identify, and that's what we ended up doing in her case. We actually looked at the area, and then we put it all on the heat map and decided to focus on a denser area like here, because this was kind of where her residence was at. And then we were just able to drill into that and get very specific. As you can imagine how that would work, because eventually once I got to where there was fewer than 300, I'm going to get those pinpoints. So let me show you what those records look like. So I've got that address information. Everything that we've seen about Darwin is that he's married, been in this home for about 16 years. Here's some of that estimated home income and home value. And then there's the reason he came in, because he's a dog lover. Now, if we were interested in, let's say, general sports, if we did another search for general sports, he may not show up in that search because he's not active enough. So know that just because you see that record here now doesn't mean it's going to be the same way when you're looking at these other categories. Let me show you another filter that you might find of interest. I'm going to revise that search a little bit. You could also choose to do this. You can come down here to the lifestyle section and show more options. Maybe with your dog business, maybe you were also a member of the American Kennel Club and they were putting on a gala for dog lovers. Well, here's one way you could filter that. You could choose show me records that match all selected interests. And maybe you're going to include dog lovers. Of course you are, it's AKC. But maybe you also want to look at charitable donors. Might they have more of a propensity to support that initiative? You could click on that, and then let's see what that does to my total number of records. So and you know what? It still isn't fixed. My apologies. There is no way we've got that many. Sorry about that. It is, I was tricked. This is still broken. So in the event that it worked, that number would have gone down. And that's something that I am still going to have to, we just launched that and it's just been quirky. So my apologies. That number should go down, should be maybe 150, 200 records, because it's got to match exactly. So in this case, it certainly did not. But you get the idea of how you can search that. The other thing, and I'm going to update my count so I don't have that large number. Notice if you select anything from consumer snapshot, so that's this area. Let's say that I want to go with age, marital status, and children present. And I select a few age ranges here. I select single with children present. What does that do to my total number now? So it drops it down to 23 records. Now here's my results on those 23. No longer do I see results. We suppress the results at that point because everything from that consumer snapshot section is considered sensitive data. So the only thing we'll let you do is put it on a chart, a matrix, or a table. Here's a for example. Maybe I want estimated home income against age in the zip code. And then I'll show that summary. It gives me that breakdown of those dollar amounts, age ranges, the zip codes they're in, and how many records are in those respective zip codes. So you can see they're pretty well spread out. So that's as close as we're going to let you get when you select anything from that consumer snapshot data. So with that said, I know I've gone long. Any questions about any of the modules, whether I have covered them or perhaps not?
Yeah, I don't see any questions here.
Okay, let me go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, if people think of questions later, they can always email me or email Bill if you think of something later that you didn't say now.
Yes, I am going to include my email address. And if anyone would like to reach out to me, I would be certainly happy to. Oh, it didn't go out to everybody though, did it? It's got to go. Oh, my bad.
Here, I changed it. I'll copy and paste that so that everyone.
Okay, perfect.
Let's see. Here we go. And okay, everyone should see his email is bill.carlson@infogroup.com in your chat box.
And if you have any questions, I would be happy to assist you with any insight I can provide you regarding data and how to search that data.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much, Bill. This has been extremely enlightening and a wonderful presentation as always. So thank you for your time with us tonight and for sharing all of these great resources and information with us.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight. Have a great